All right, thank you very much, everyone. And before we begin, let's take a moment to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodian of the lands we are joining from today. Now, in the spirit of reconciliation, ITConnexion acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Good morning and welcome everyone to 2025 ITConnexion, Sophos Cyber Resilient for SMEs and NFPs webinar. My name is Christian and I will be your moderator for today. And before we dive in, there's a few quick things to keep in mind. We will record today's webinar session and afterward, we will share with you the link to access the video recording through email. And also please do note that all attendees' microphone will be muted and video will be turned off to minimize distraction. And since we will have a Q&A session later on, I encourage if anyone who has questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them at the Q&A box. And lastly, we'll be giving away $100 gift voucher and we will announce the winner at the end of today's session. So please stick around. Now let's take a quick look at today's agenda. And before we explore the specifics of cybersecurity, allow us to provide a brief overview about ITConnexion, who we are, what we do, and how we can assist companies to strengthen their cybersecurity. We will also discuss in regards to the common challenges that SMEs and NFP encounter when they would like to enhance their cyber resilience. Also, the role of Essential 8. What is Essential 8 and why is important for a company to adopt Essential 8 to mitigate a cyber risk? And next, we will present to you a real-world case of cyber attack and the impact that it brings to NFP and SMEs. And also to provide a better understanding on how this attack happens, we will have a dedicated segment to showcase a live demonstration of Sophos Intercept X in action. And next, once we have a better understanding regarding the risk that we are dealing with, we would like to focus on how to protect businesses against them. Now, Australia Cybersecurity Center recommend 8 essential framework for companies to adopt or to implement to defend against an ever-evolving cyber threat attack. And here, we would like to share with you in regards to the best practice and how to implement these measures to effectively protect company digital assets. And lastly, we will have the Q&A session along with announcing the winner of $100 gift voucher. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce to our first speaker, Mark Seraphim. So Mark is the Chief Customer Officer and Company Director at ITConnexion. And Mark here will lead us through the first initial part of today's presentation. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Christian, and good morning, everyone. We thank you all for joining us today. We're obviously thrilled to have you here and hope that obviously you find this session both interesting and informative. So just first of all, I'd like to just briefly touch on an overview of our organisation for those that don't know us. We've been around for over 21 years and during this time have established ourselves as a trusted technology and growth partner for our clients. Our team comprises at the moment of 60 plus IT experts helping 180 plus companies across 10 cities and 4 countries. This extensive experience allows us to excel in our core areas such as IT managed services, excuse me, cloud solutions, IT security, and software and web development. Our focus on leveraging cloud services enhances efficiency, scalability, and mobility, giving our clients a competitive edge. As you can see from this slide, our client base spans a diverse range of industries, showcasing our adaptability and broad appeal. Excuse me. Notably, many of our clients have been with us since our inception in 2003, which speaks, I think, to the relationship and trust that we've built with those clients, as well as the value that we provide. And also interestingly to note that the top 7 of the top 10 of our clients are non-for-profit organisations, and this is a trend that's emerged organically through referrals and endorsements rather than a targeted strategy. We also have partnerships with leading technology vendors, which are crucial for delivering solutions to our clients. By aligning with these industry giants such as Microsoft and Sophos, we ensure that our clients have access to cutting-edge technologies that can effectively tackle their business challenges. These collaborations obviously allow us to stay at the forefront of innovation, ensuring our clients benefit from the latest advancements in technology. So first of all, let's move on to our first topic, which are the risks of weak cybersecurity. So we can share these slides afterwards, so don't get caught up in reading the numbers. But it's important to sort of step back and take a look at the bigger picture. And these numbers you see here aren't just statistics. They represent real-world disruptions, financial losses, reputational damage, and in some cases, business shutdowns. So a lot of this data comes from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and it's an annual report from 2023-24. And as you can see, the current landscape is quite alarming, with over 87,000 reported cyber crimes in the last financial year, which marks a 12% increase from the previous financial year. And this translates to an attack occurring every 6 minutes, and they're predominantly targeting small businesses. Financial toll is also quite staggering, with reported losses exceeding 68.7 billion, averaging 50,000 for small business and 63,000 for medium business. The severity of these attacks is also on the rise, with nearly half classified as substantial. As an example here, phishing attacks are a significant concern in Australia, with an average of 239 reported incidents occurring daily. And individuals are losing on average $30,000, while businesses face losses totaling 33 billion. In this slide, we can see sort of a detailed overview of average losses businesses have faced due to cybercrime over the past 3 financial years. Notably, small businesses represent a significant portion of the market, have seen a year-on-year increase, while for medium and larger businesses, the trend is slightly downward. And I think this suggests that efforts to combat cyber threats within these larger organisations might be having a positive effect. Furthermore, there's an 8% increase in self-reported costs, which indicates a potential shift in the landscape of cybercrime, but the impact on small business remains significant. And then finally, this highlights some of the sources of these data breaches, and comes from the OAIC, which is a government department. And it sort of shows that 38% of data breaches stem from cybersecurity incidents, and 67% of those breaches are attributed to malicious or criminal attacks, while human error accounts for 30%. And this is often something that's sort of not looked at, that human error is a significant factor. Things like sending personal information to incorrect recipients, or unauthorized disclosure of personal information happens regularly. And the majority of these attacks could have been prevented with the right strategies obviously in place, simple things like end user training or implementation of the Essential 8 baseline. So what are the common challenges for small to medium businesses and non-for-profits? Obviously, cybersecurity remains a significant concern because it's out there and we see it every day in the media, but it's often perceived as an overwhelming challenge. For example, 43% of businesses believe that setting up and maintaining cybersecurity measures is too complicated. And 35% of small businesses find the time required to implement these practices becomes burdensome, especially when balancing existing workloads. Limited resources often hinder the ability to invest in robust security measures, leaving small businesses, non-for-profits vulnerable. Additionally, there's a lack of specialised cybersecurity expertise, making it difficult for these organisations to effectively identify and mitigate these risks. And it's also the we'll handle it ourselves approach, which is not the right approach. Financial constraints often play also a significant role, as the costs associated with cybersecurity solutions and training can be hard to justify against competing priorities. And then navigating the complex landscape of compliance with legal and regulatory requirements can often be overwhelming for SMBs and non-for-profit organisations. We've seen an increase in requirements not only for contract compliance, but also across cyber security insurance policies. So this leads us to the Essential 8. So what is it? The Essential 8 was developed by the Australian Signals Directorate with key contributions coming from the ACSC, or Australian Cyber Security Centre, which is a branch of the ASD. And the ASD, if you don't know, is an Australian government intelligence agency responsible for foreign signals intelligence and information security for Australia and specifically the government. The objectives of the Essential 8 strategy are aimed at helping organisations, big, small, etc., to enhance their cybersecurity defences and protect sensitive data. Importantly, the E8 aligns with many of the global cybersecurity standards. And I think implementing this strategy, organisations can achieve a comprehensive approach to security and address multiple aspects of the security threats and risks. Each of the 8 strategies you can see in the diagram here covers off things like patching applications and operating systems, multi-factor authentication, and sort of all of these simple things play a vital role in fortifying defences. We can sort of categorise the baselines into 3 sort of main categories. Preventing malware delivery is sort of these 4 items on the right-hand side. And then limiting the extent of cybersecurity incidents, which sort of covers off these 3 down the bottom left. And then finally, strategies to recover data and system being basically backup of your services. So within the Essential 8, there's also 3 maturity levels that define an organisation's implementation of the E8, and that's maturity level 1, 2, and 3. Apart from maturity level 0, basically all levels are based on mitigating increasing levels of tradecraft. With each maturity level comes increased compliance requirements for each of the strategies. For example, application control and whitelisting is simpler to implement at ML1 rather than maturity level 2, which requires the use of specialised application control software solution. Organisations need to consider the chance of being targeted as for a cybersecurity incident, and it will depend on the security measures that have been taken for the safety of your systems and data to keep you secure. With the different combinations of maturity level applied through the Essential 8 baseline, it can be used to help determine which level the organisation is at and which elements need to be implemented. And from our point of view, we would like to see most organisations at least a maturity level 1, but push to adopt some of the strategies of maturity level 2. So why is the Essential 8 critical? It provides, I guess, a straightforward framework to enhance cybersecurity for organisations. By implementing these strategies, organisations can significantly reduce their vulnerability to common cyber threats such as ransomware and data breaches. Compliance with legal data protection requirements is obviously crucial as well, especially for non-for-profits that handle sensitive information. I think it also fosters cyber resilience for organisations, enabling them to recover swiftly from attacks. Importantly, also adopting these practices can mitigate financial risks associated with cyber incidents and enhance trust amongst stakeholders. By adopting the Essential 8 framework, NFPs and small business can significantly enhance their cybersecurity posture, protect their digital assets, and build resilience against cyber threats. Okay, so I'll pass over now to Chris from our partner Sophos, who we're lucky to have with us today, who will also provide us some insights from Sophos as one of the world leaders in cybersecurity products. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. Thanks, Mark, and welcome everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak with you today and obviously cover off some of the real world cyber threats that we're seeing and risks. So today what I'm going to be going through is some details from our latest State of Ransomware report in 2024. We do publish this every year, and we do open this up to a global organisation. So we take respondents from all over the world, including here in Australia and New Zealand. And sample size is quite a large or quite a comprehensive group of businesses and organisations, including SMB. So it's no surprise, and I think Mark quickly touched on that ransomware is not going anywhere anytime soon. Although we did see a bit of a spike over 2022, 2023, and it did drop a little bit in 2024, that doesn't mean that it's any less dangerous or prevalent. I think one of the most important things that we've seen is the level of sophistication and the rate of adoption from cyber criminals to adapt and really identify areas of weak protection, and what we see is that exploit of those protections. So probably the biggest thing is understanding the challenge. What is a challenge to small to medium-sized businesses and not-for-profits? And really it comes down to utilising good hygiene, cyber hygiene, and there's a number of those things. And what is the concern around the tools that we use? So from a threat actor standpoint, you'll see here there's a quote from a particular ransomware group that they look to compromise things like remote desktop VPNs and security controls and portals mainly. So it's interesting when we have a look at what's perceived as the biggest risk across the different segments that you'll see there. For SMBs, it's really about the unknowns around zero-day threats, shortage of in-house cybersecurity expertise and skills. You'll see there, dropping down the list, stolen credentials, misconfiguration, and insecure wireless networking, where it's slightly different for some of the larger organisations. Understandably, if they've got larger teams, they invest a lot in different tool sets and have the resources. So things like misconfiguration, stolen access and credentials appears quite prominently, and that goes across even the largest organisations. So if we have a look at some of those concerns, we talked about vulnerabilities and exploited vulnerabilities. You've only got to look at any Patch Tuesday from Microsoft in where we see a number of those vulnerabilities being published and exploited in the wild or publicly disclosed. And then what we see from compromised credentials. So we know that users' credentials are a treasure trove for cyber criminals. There's something that they can get their hands on can really aid in the attack or aid in their progression of an attack. But then we also have a look at how we see the ingress. So not just to compromised credentials, but things like how do they get those compromised credentials, phishing emails, brute force attacks, and so forth. It's also interesting that the lack of expertise. So, there's a saying that cyber criminals only got to be right once, where a defender or an organisation is going to be right every single time. So we can see that most organisations find that those cyber skills and shortages really impact their cybersecurity posture. First of all, not being able to identify signals from noise. Also, understanding which signals to investigate. And then also understanding the data that's coming through, whether it's a malicious attack or not. Quite often, a benign incident can take just as long as a malicious incident to investigate. And a lot of small and medium-sized businesses just don't have the resources to proactively go out and investigate, the plethora of noise that is coming out from their security tools. There's also the lack of capacity through the resources. So we know that cyber criminals are very opportunistic. They don't attack during convenient times, business hours, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. They will stage and will attack at all hours of the day to further their objectives. So a number of cyber attacks, or quite overwhelmingly, will start outside of business hours at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. And that's predominantly where a lot of organisations don't have any visibility or tools to be able to respond or identify those attack vectors or indicators of compromise. What's also interesting is, not just ransomware, being able to encrypt the data, but also where we see the theft of that data. So, as I said, cyber criminals are very adept at really finding the pain points for organisations. It may be the divulge or the public release of information, as we saw with things like Medibank, putting pressure on the organisation to pay a ransom. And a lot of those organisations may not get their data back, even if after they pay the ransom. So if we have a look, sort of a breakdown, and we look at those concerns that we sort of touched on a moment ago, different industries also feel different attacks or different compromises differently. So we see there are a lot of utilities and emergency services, those types, critical infrastructure, fall victim to unpatched vulnerabilities. In the government space, compromised credentials, and I would also say in the private sector, compromised credentials is a big one. And then in technology terms, brute force attacks, where threat actors are constantly, day in and day out, trying to find their way into these organisations. Also, not just with the attack itself, but the damage that an attack can occur. So the time that it takes for an organisation to recover from a ransomware, as we have seen, has actually dropped, being able to recover within less than a week. But there's also quite a large gap of those that are taking more than a month. So again, we are seeing a lot of challenges around being able to respond to an incident quickly. A lot of the tool sets, a lot of organisations are starting to understand, the importance of things like the Essential 8, where that fits in to provide that, baseline security posture. But then again, being able to monitor and manage those security tools. So exploited vulnerabilities have the most severe impact. We see in a number of cases that things like backups are being compromised ever more increasingly. The encryption rate has been going up. But what's interesting is that when we see the damage from, say, a ransomware attack, depending on how and what tools are engaged, will result in how much damage a threat actor can do within an environment. Those that are quick to adapt and adopt and limit the impact of a ransomware attack, and we'll see there's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to a ransomware attack. When we talk about ransomware, it's quite often the victim just sees the final stages, although there's a lot that happens leading up to those final stages. So being in the position of the amount of damage, the type of attack, the attackers that we're looking at, could be multiple attackers, could really depend on how long it takes for a business to recover, and obviously the damage to things like reputation and getting back up to speed. We do see a lot of organisations, really struggle, and for SMB, a hit to your bottom line business can sometimes actually force a business to fold up. So if we have a look at what we're concerned about around cyber attacks, one of the key elements is that not everything gets divulged. We know that there's a lot of frameworks out there and legal requirements to report cyber incidents. Notifiable data breach scheme is one of those. But we also see that some victims don't report the breach. And a lot of this has to do with things like damage to reputation. They weren't too sure about the breach in the first place, what damage had been done, what had been taken, if anything had been exfiltrated, which really leaves organisations in a very dangerous position if they're not getting this visibility and they're not getting this awareness from their security posture or their tools that they deploy. So how is it that cyber criminals can bypass things like the Essential 8 controls? Well, the Essential 8 actually forms part of the top 35. So the Essential 8 is the 8 controls within 35, which are essential for cybersecurity that the government sees. And what we see quite often is a lot of organisations aren't too sure of how to implement or how to actually work their way through the maturity model from 0 to level 3. The Essential 8 you'll see here, and most of these you may be familiar with, things like application control, patching, disabling things like Microsoft macros, application hardening, restriction of administrative privileges and patching, are all geared towards some of those concerns or those concerns that we saw around the different attack vectors. So things like compromised credentials, being able to restrict admin privileges. We often see adversaries enter a network using unprivileged access and then elevate their permissions to gain further access within an environment. If we have a look at things like application whitelisting, the sanctioning of applications and preventing those that aren't sanctioned to run an environment, we are seeing in a lot of cases, in a lot of attacks, the use of legitimate pen testing tools, things like Mimikatz, PowerShell, Cobalt Strike, and even AnyDesk, being able to restrict access to these applications and prevent other applications from running can help thwart threat actors from utilising those tools. And we're going to go through a couple of these a little bit later on in our live session. I mentioned vulnerabilities and unpatched vulnerabilities. From years gone by, we know that application and application patching is a struggle. The number of applications that businesses are using in their environment, the diversity of those applications, really lends itself to a lot of time and resources to ensure that these applications are being patched. And we're seeing more and more patches being released. As I mentioned earlier on, you've only got to take Microsoft, for example. The amount of vulnerabilities in applications is increasing, and the level of criticality in those applications or the vulnerabilities in those applications is increasing, and those that are publicly disclosed. And of course, MFA, multi-factor authentication, it's often said in cybersecurity, there's no magic bullet. MFA isn't the answer to all of our questions, right? But it certainly is part of that control. When we look at how we layer security, cyber criminals, may modify or intercept multi-factor authentication to, simulate or pretend to be a particular user in an organization, and then gain access through that way to spread their wares. So I'm going to use an example here. This was a customer that came to us, actually came to our Managed Detection and Response Service, our rapid response service, after the fact. But you'll see here that this particular attack, and this is a live attack, started on April 15, 2024. In the initial stage of the attack, the attacker executed a number of PUAs or potentially unwanted applications in the customer's environment. You'll see there a couple of days later, the attacker then started to attack particular devices in that environment. So they were successfully able to enter this environment through a vulnerability, and then use a number of tools, what we call living off the land, to be able to go undetected, or at least go unsupervised from IT admins. They were using things like PowerShell. You'll see there, over the space of 15 minutes, the attacker was able to remotely execute a number of commands on multiple devices and attempted to harvest credentials from those devices, one of which was a actually domain controller. You see the next day that the attacker was able to execute a common pen testing tool called Cobalt Strike on a second device, running at a high level of privilege, and then use remote tools to access across the network to continue their attack. So the threat actor, in this case, Volt Typhoon, is a known nation-state threat actor. They employ tactics to operate stealthily within an environment using things like web shells, what we call LOL bins, or LOL, living off the land binaries, as well as hands-on keyboard activities, utilizing things like stolen credentials. One such example of this vulnerability was a zero-day exploit that was conducted back in June, between June and August 2024. So what are some of the recommendations around building your cybersecurity posture and utilizing things like the Essential 8? Well, prevention's always better than a cure. Being able to keep your organization protected, controlling your attack surface, so prioritize your patching, implementing things like MFA, as well as providing ongoing training and awareness to your staff. All right. So awareness around organisations sort of dips and falls depending on what's happening in the media. So we know when there's a big cyber breach, as there was with things like Medibank, cyber awareness is on the tip of everyone's tongue and on the front of everyone's mind. But as we start to see those things subside, we often find cyber awareness sort of dips and the activities around cyber awareness. But it's something that's super important all the time. We should be on top of this. We often say, smaller, short, sharp, more frequent user awareness, something that is engaging to educate users to help them to spot and prevent things like phishing and providing credentials. Protection's a big one, obviously. So having your antivirus, not just on your endpoints, but protection across your environment really helps to build and prevent and protect an environment and get visibility as well. So building on those multiple layers of protection. Detection response is a big one. So again, meeting some of those challenges around resourcing and skills and capabilities around being able to identify those signals that come in at, say, 2 o'clock in the morning and knowing what to do with those, being able to sift through the noise to identify those high fidelity signals and how they relate to each other, can help neutralize an adversary from spreading or moving laterally in the environment, and helping to reduce the impact of a cyber breach or incident. And of course, probably the big one is the planning and preparation, building things like incident response plans, ensuring that your environment and aligning to things like the Essential 8, we're ever striving to build on that maturity model. So moving up from your level 1 to your level 3 is a constant process. So one of the key things is, again, with organisations with limited resources, limited budgets, and limited skills, is being able to consolidate your tools. So being able to centrally deploy, monitor, and manage your various security solutions in one place helps to reduce the admin for performing security tasks. You've got fewer touch points, being able to manage multiple solutions in the one, but also being able to drill in and enhance the security collaboration between everything that's in an environment, through applications, through to infrastructure, through to users and people and data. So again, choosing wisely for small businesses, knowing what your needs are, not necessarily paying for unnecessary features that you're not typically using. Simplifying the tools, the deployment, the configuration, something that's easy to manage and easy to be updated as you move through the cybersecurity frameworks. Helping to avoid things like misconfiguration. Again, we did see that as one of the big concerns for some of the larger organizations is misconfiguring those security tools. It's all well and good to have the latest and greatest Ferrari, but if you're not utilizing it to its full potential, there's obviously areas of risk there. And where possible, allow your tools, a lot of cybersecurity tools now build in automation, being able to block and stop and respond to incidents without needing to have a person look at it is crucially important. So it saves and buys that defender crucial time to identify and remediate any incidents that may happen. So I guess to sum up, the key challenges are disproportionately impact smaller businesses. Again, those challenges of resourcing, budget, and expertise. Again, being able to identify quickly those signals of compromise or indicators of compromise so that you can shut them down earlier on as possible. Prevention, again, is better than a cure. And for those that can't, is to partner with an organisation that can provide those services for you and that can tailor that solution, understanding your needs to help build your cybersecurity posture. That's where we'll stop it there. As I said, happy to go through and any follow-up sessions. If anyone is curious and would like to know more, please feel free to reach out. But back over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chris. I think that was certainly eye-opening, to say the least, and it's pretty interesting seeing it all happening live in front of your eyes. That's sort of the first time I've seen that presentation, so very, very, very informative. All right, so in the interests of getting through the presentation, because we're just running short on time, what I just wanted to quickly briefly talk about now was how do we build cyber resilience with the Essential 8. So Essential 8 sort of, we need to take a structured approach to this to ensure that you can, like your organisation can essentially effectively adopt these strategies and enhance your cybersecurity posture. So first of all, we would look to conduct a thorough security assessment and review your organisation's current cybersecurity and identify any gaps or weaknesses that exist. And just also we sort of look at understanding the risks or specific risks that need to be mitigated and sort of tailor the strategies based on your organisation's needs and priorities. Following that, we would look at preparing a report after that assessment, which is quite a detailed report, but outlines the findings and recommendations. And in addition to that, we would sort of cover off a roadmap for implementing the Essential 8 strategies and try to prioritise sort of any actions based on their impact. Sort of, I like to sort of liken it to sort of attacking the low-hanging fruit as a priority. Next, we sort of look at implementation, implementing the improvements to meet the Essential 8, and you know, things like cybersecurity awareness training, and maybe even a stage rollout of the various strategies to help reduce costs and ensure the process stays within budget. And then finally, it's kind of like a continuous improvement phase where we sort of regularly review where things are at and I'll try to adapt to meet you know, the ever-evolving threats. So how can ITConnexion help you? Bit of a shameless plug, but We've obviously already done this for many organisations and have a proven track record for helping numerous clients enhance their cybersecurity posture. And our team, it comprises of, as we said before, 60 plus experts. And a lot of those lead engineers, for example, have in-depth knowledge of the Essential 8 and industry best practices. And not only that, we also sort of tailor the approach to each organisation, ensuring that it's effectively integrated into your existing systems. And I think, as you saw through Chris's presentation, we have a fairly advanced tool set, including the Sophos products, but also automated patch management solutions and other proactive monitoring solutions. And all of this sort of, we hope, seamlessly integrates with your environment, both whether it's cloud or on-premise. And then Chris touched on this also, will also help try and develop comprehensive threat detection and incident response strategies, because I think they're very important if they're designed well to quickly identify and mitigate potential breaches for your organisation. And I think it's also important to note that it's important, like Chris said, to partner with organisations that sort of, at the end of the day, have your back and have those tools and expertise to provide your organisation with the guidance required to implement such security measures. So at the very least, if you got anything out of today's webinar, you should ensure that you're implementing MFA across all your devices or services, patch management policies, start to look at, how can you implement cybersecurity training across your organisation as well. So I just wanted to thank you all for attending today, and hope you've gained a clearer insight into the current landscape. And it's a bit of an appreciation of what we sort of deal with on a daily basis. All right. So do we have any questions?
We do. We've got a couple of questions here, and some very good questions, actually. I'm glad that this is the topic of conversation. So the first question here is from Mikael, and he asks, what is the most common cybersecurity mistake small businesses and not-for-profits make, and how can they avoid it? Good question. I think, as Mark mentioned, overestimating capability and overcomplicating security measures and tools. Consolidating, we know, brings a lot of efficiencies, and understanding, the limitations, whether it be resources and skills, and actually partnering with someone that does it day in and day out. Their specialty is providing the cybersecurity, like a partner, and also, trying to understand that, or believing that, you won't be a target. All organizations, all individuals are targets these days, no matter what size the business. I know traditionally SMBs and not-for-profits are like, well, why would someone want to attack us? What benefit would that be? But as we know, there's a lot of benefits, there's a lot of things to gain from threat actors targeting small to medium-sized businesses and not-for-profits because of those concerns that we saw before. How can you avoid it? Again, I'll go back the tool sets and partnering with a great partner to help provide those services where you don't have the resources or you don't have the skills and capabilities to be able to respond to and identify an attack early on. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mark.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's also another question here from Rajan, is how do you see blockchain AI evolving in cybersecurity, particularly in terms of data integrity and identity management in small, medium businesses where there's limited resources?
Yeah, I think most organizations, most security vendors have been using many different forms of AI in their products. I know that it's something that's sort of hit the headlines because it's made publicly, like a lot of technology. It's actually been around for quite some time, and a lot of vendors like ourselves do have AI built into a lot of our security controls and products and workflows. I think it'll play more and more a larger part in cybersecurity defending. We seem to think that AI might benefit the threat actors, which is to a certain degree, but the rate of adoption for those guys hasn't been hugely noticed. We haven't seen, a huge spike in AI-driven threats or attacks. But certainly using blockchain AI, is an area that's of great interest and development that's happening across the board, across a lot of security vendors. I think can play, it's like most things, we want to ensure that it's done responsibly and it's done ethically to ensure that it's of benefit. There's no point in applying AI just for the sake of it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits of it, and I think that you'll find a lot of it will be there and present, if not in front of you and obvious, but certainly we'll see more and more of that being prevalent in security, definitely.
Yeah, agree. I think we're seeing a lot of requests coming from our clients on, how do we implement AI into our organization? And also, sort of that opens up a lot of questions like, what's your environment? Sort of what security measures do you have in place? For us, we're sort of going through that process as well at the moment, and it means sort of shoring up our environment to ensure that we can effectively implement AI within our organization. So I think there's a lot of free tools. A case in point, yesterday we had a client reach out and basically say to us that they joined a meeting in their organization and these couple of different AI bots popped up in the Teams meeting. So, that was a concern for some of the staff. So it's about, I think, also setting policies within the organisation and ensuring that you've got the security controls in place to ensure you can sort of adopt those kind of tools effectively. All right. I think there's a couple more questions here, but I think we've sort of run out of time. So we might try and respond to those and maybe send out an email with a bit more information. Christian, I'll pass back to you.
Now, I do notice that there are a few questions that being left unanswered, and we don't want that, right? And that's why in here, we would like to inform to you that for all who attend for today's session, would like to provide and offer an obligation-free cyber security and cyber resilience consultation. And all you need to do is just to simply contact us based on the contact details that's showing on our screen, and our team will be more than happy to assist you. And lastly, I would like to say thank you very much to the fantastic speaker that we have today, Mark Seraphim and Chris Goldsmith, and of course, to everyone who joined today's webinar session. And also a brief reminder that after this, we will send you an email which will include the video recording of today's session and also a short survey. We would really appreciate your feedback on these matters. And lastly, as always, have a great business day ahead, and please stay cyber safe. Thank you very much.